we call this nickel and diming in the US. I don't know if that's a universal expression or not, but this idea that every little quanta of cost is being captured and passed on. You see people that, like 10 friends that go out to eat, and the check comes and they all start getting out their calculators and counting, and
Yeah.
that's it makes sense that that would be less prevalent overall in a world that's much wealthier, right? That you'd be less sensitive to these little micro costs, and so therefore you'd have less need for microtransactions, I guess, to cover them. And it also makes sense to me that overall, like, this is, I guess, independent of the wealth available in the world, but by using a money that successfully minimizes trust, right? That's the whole value prop of Bitcoin is, don't trust, verify. The whole system is basically 100% verification, 0% trust, more or
Yeah.
less. You could say there's still some, you have to trust the miners to behave in their own self-interest and things like that. But as we lower the cost of trust, you would expect to see a proliferation, like a more trusting world, which is kind of paradoxical. And that's the tweet I sent out, which actually, reading your article reminded me of this tweet. I sent this tweet originally September 2021.
Cool.
So it's funny, once again, I guess we're kind of like great minds think alike. We figure these things
ours
out
too.
in our own way.
Yeah.
I didn't write an article about it. I just put out one little tweet, but it's definitely an interesting thing to think about, because, like, first of all, when you say trust minimization to people, like, that's very counterintuitive. People, and
It is.
for great minds, there's like Jordan Peterson. He often talks about this book he read. I don't know which book it is, but he says the book makes the case that trust is the ultimate natural resource. So that
Yeah.
you would think we'd want to increase the trust in the world. How do we do that? Well, trust minimization doesn't sound like the right way to do that. But there's some paradoxical thing here. It's like I like to think about it as, again, cost effectiveness. Instead of saying we're minimizing trust, you're actually minimizing the cost necessary to establish trust in terms of time, energy, engagement. And so obviously, if you lower the unit cost of establishing trust, then you increase the total output of trust, or the total production of trust, something like that.
Exactly, because money is a representation of the value of our scarce time here on this earth. And if it's a good money, it's a good representation of it. And Bitcoin is a perfect representation of it, because it's as finite as our time on this earth. And it's the first, that's a first for humanity. So it's the first time we had a perfect representation of what we truly are. Finite beings, a small link in a long chain of generations. And how when you've been in, I don't know if you've ever been, but if you've ever been in a life-threatening situation where you thought you were going to die, or that there was a great probability, that a high probability that you would die, you tend to reevaluate your life after that, and you start to value your time more, because you get a reminder that it's limited. Everyone dies. So and like I said, Bitcoin is a perfect representation of that. So it's a bit of a stretch that enables us to trust each other more. But I really think it does, because when you have corrupt money that does not accurately represent that, then you engage in voluntary interactions with each other. A voluntary action and a transaction are the same thing, as long as the money is fair and you can trust it. So, but when you can't trust the money, and the voluntary interaction gets corrupted by this third party leeching value from it, then that's what creates the mistrust we have in each other. So I think what Bitcoin is doing is connecting humanity into this singular unit, so that our tribal instincts and Dunbar's number and all of that, we can extend that tribe without sacrificing uh, our own integrity and our own individuality. It's the first time we've had a system that is actually able to coordinate all human beings instead of just the human beings in a specific tribe or religion or nation or whatever group. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. So, Bitcoin, I guess, is kind of circumventing trust in a way by saying, well, again, it's always captured in that phrase, don't trust, verify, but the system itself saying here's universally transparent, verifiable mathematics, essentially. Right. So you can just have instead of putting your full faith and full faith and credit of the US government, I think is on the dollar bill. We're putting our
also
full faith
in God we trust.
In God we trust.
That's also on the dollar bill.
They're trying to piggyback and hijack.
Yeah.
Trust in God. Instead, we
trust
can place,
in God and the Fed.
Instead, we can place full faith and credit in mathematics, which I don't think there's much argument about that being a bad idea. Like it's the highest resolution language for reality we have. I think was it Galileo, the language of the universe, something like that. So
yeah, so it's not really faith. It's
it is faith though, because
probabilistic risk, like it's an accurate risk taking, it is very likely to be true.
Most likely to be true, but still any system of knowledge is going to be built on top of axioms, and ultimately you have faith in those axioms, right? Even in Austrian economics, man must act. We don't know how to refute it. We don't know how to think our way out of it. It seems pretty reliable, but ultimately you're having faith in an axiom. I think that's just true of any system of knowledge. I know you don't like the word faith. I know you don't like the word faith, but I don't think you can avoid it either.
No, okay, I can buy that. I would say that I'd use the word an accurate assumption.
Fair enough. Faith is shorter. I'll stick with that one. Trust.
This is semantics. Yeah.
Semantics. So we get a system that circumvents trust by letting us place faith in mathematics. Other things too, thermodynamics, Darwinian self-preservation. These are all kind of components of the Bitcoin network. Yep. But trust seems to be, if I'm trying to dissect that a little bit, isn't it rooted in the belief of ongoing consensual interaction or transaction? Like if I trust someone a lot, like I trust my friend, someone I've known for years and years and years, I just have a belief that he's only going to do things he won't do anything to harm me, right? If I turn my back to give him a plate of food, he's not going to punch me in the head and take my food, kind of thing. Yeah. So there's something about consent very closely related to this trust too. I guess by Bitcoin removing the option largely for non-consensual interactions or transactions, that you've left no other options, right? So it's like it's much more likely people will behave and engage with you consensually, because the options for non-consensual exchange are largely removed. In the case, like you can't inflate Bitcoin, you can't confiscate it very easily. You could also say just disincentivized, where sure, you could try to come steal someone's Bitcoin, but if they've custodied it properly, there's not a big carrot to that enterprise. When I say carrot, I mean incentive to that enterprise.
And you can't know how many Bitcoins they have.
Right.
So a violent actor is always disincentivized to take the violent action rather than to provide something of value back, because you can never know how much you could have gotten out of this person by being nice to them instead.
And even if you did somehow know that they had a shitload of Bitcoin, the probability that you're going to get it is very, very low. So when you're actually doing this like weighted average, what is it called, expected value calculation,
Yeah.
where you're looking at the probability and the payoff, and you're trying to figure it out. The probability shrinks tremendously. So this is why I think we often talk about in Bitcoin the profitability of coercion or violence. Like Bitcoin lowers the profitability of violence. And so if you make
Very
violence less
much so.
profitable, it's somewhat intuitive that we would all be more trusting.
Well, when you can't take something by force, and you can't even know how much it is, there's just no other way of extracting value from the other man or woman, well, than providing something of value back. And that's where we're voluntarists, or libertarians, or anarcho-capitalists, or whatever label you want to put on it. I like voluntarist because I like actions to be voluntary and not forceful.
I got schooled
Uh,
on this one the other day, real quick. Sorry to interrupt, but I've always said that too: voluntary
yeah,
versus involuntary exchange.
yeah,
And I had Stefan Kinsella on the show, and he says actually it's consensual versus non-consensual, because technically, even when you submit to coercion, it's voluntary, right? Someone puts a gun to your head and says, "Give me your wallet."
yeah,
It's a voluntary action that you handed him your wallet, but it wasn't
yeah,
consensual. And he would say, what was the other example he gave? Is that you can have a seizure. Like, what's something that's actually involuntary is when you have a seizure. That's involuntary. You did not
yeah.
intend to do that. You can't control it. You can't stop it.
But yeah, so when you board
So
the
that's
plane
his
with the
line.
mask on, you always have the option to say "fuck you," I won't do what you tell me,
Right.
and go the other way. So
Right.
yeah, so are we consensualists then?
Yes. Consensualist. Exactly.
That sounds convoluted, but okay, I'll buy it for now. Yeah, but back to a point you made before about everyone becoming wealthier, and this is also hard for Keynesians to grasp, that every boat rises with the tide, and that in a functioning economy with sound money, everyone actually does get wealthier. Everyone who does anything gets wealthier than they used to be, and the more wealth you acquire, like we said before, the more altruistic you can be. And that's also, you can afford uh, to lose money. You can afford to you can afford a lot more things, so you can afford to be nicer to people. And it's not a coincidence that poorer areas of the world are often more crime ridden than wealthier ones. uh, so of course it's better for everyone if everyone has an ability to get richer. That's just very natural. And all of these movies and children's stories that tell you about the big bad capitalist in some, you know, Uncle Scrooge in his big pile of cash, being the bad guy, that is not really true. I mean, in a fair economy, the wealthiest man is the man who provides most value to his fellow human beings.
Who saved them the
That's
most time.
exactly, which is should be the same thing, um, because money is time. That's it. It should be time. Bitcoin is time.